power strip or one power cord that runs the whole cart. Okay, and then on the back side are two cables that are, that one was supposed to be brown, but it's brown and yellow. And then in any of your rooms on the boom, there's a brown on the back of the computer for Provation and on the boom for your image. Okay, and you'll just unplug the two that are there, plug these in, and your image will come up on the screen and it will be on the Provation computer. And then on the computer in the room, when the doctor wants to take a picture, he'll say capture, and you'll have to do it on the computer. Somebody in the room will have to do it on the computer because it's not actually capable from the scope since they didn't put a computer on here. Okay, you've got processor, light source, and then balloon pump unit. This runs both the balloons after we install them on the scope, and then there's also a controller that I'll go over that this is what you'll use to inflate and deflate those balloons during the procedure. Okay. And then there's a bunch of supplies on here. You've got your special CO2 water bottle connector to our scope because it's a different connector than Olympus, so they'll grab this, put it on a sterile water bottle, and then you'll hook this up to your CO2 that's in the room. Okay. And then on the cart as well, you've got special disposable buttons for Fuji scope, so you'll just use these two buttons. One's suction, the other one's air water, and they're color coordinated orange and blue, and on our scope I'll show you they're orange and blue. You won't use this biopsy cap or the one-way valve because what the doctors here like is using this, and this is on the cart as well. It's the US endoscopy with the flush port here because the scope actually doesn't have forward water jet on it, so that's what they like to use is this one here. And so you'll just hook that up to the scope and then hook your forward water jet up the flush pump to this, so they can do that during the case. Okay. The other items that will be on the cart is a box that looks like this, and it will have all these supplies in here, so I'll just go through them. These are the balloon adapters, which we'll use to put the balloon on the scope. You've got a band adapter, which is, I call it kind of a band, like an old hemorrhoid band gun, but you're putting bands on the balloons to keep it on the scope. And then in this package are the balloons and bands. Okay. I don't know what happened, but when they come, they look like this in the bag, and there will be 10 balloons and 20 bands. So you should never get off. Somehow we did today, so we're going to start with a new one. But yeah, you'll always use 2 bands and 1 balloon. Okay. The other big thing is the bands or the balloons and the overtube and what we're going to put on the scope are latex. So if the patient latex allergy, probably have to figure out how allergic they are and either reschedule, or a lot of the doctors have been putting them on like a prednisone for 10 days and then they bring them back and they're fine to do the case. But it's kind of obviously the doctor and the patient's call on the latex sensitivity. Also in the cart are what we call the overtubes, and they come packaged individually. And they're just, and I'll show you one right here. It's just an overtube that the balloon is already on, attached, and we put this on the scope first, and then we have to put that balloon on. Okay. So we'll go through that. Your scope connects a little bit different than your Olympus. So when you grab the scope, you'll just plug it in to the light source first, and then the water cap is built in and it just twists off, and you'll just line up the white dot to the black dot and then twist that to lock it in place. Okay. And then on the scope you'll have 2 adapters. One, this cap and this cleaning adapter should stay with the scope the whole time because they need it in the cleaning room as well as we're going to need it for setup. So what I usually do is after we're plugging it in, just throw it back in to the bin that you're going to take it into the cleaning room. Okay, and then on the scope you can see here's your orange and blue for the air, water, and suction buttons, and then your biopsy cap. Okay, the scope is 200 centimeters long, so it's a little bit longer than your normal colon. Okay, but all of your colonic devices will go through this. So anything that's 230 centimeters or longer will work in here. So your forceps, your clips, your any of that stuff, your Irby probes, all those items will work in the scope. Okay. first thing you'll do is need to get one of these over tubes out, and they come packaged, basically just pre-packaged one at a time. And they look like this. So you've got balloon, over tube, and then you have two different adapters here. One is blue for water. Water's our lubricant between the scope and the over tube. And the other one is air, which during the procedure is going to inflate and deflate this balloon during the procedure. Okay. If you don't have enough water in here, this will get stuck to the scope, and then we have to cut it off. So you want to make sure, what we always do is just make sure when we put water in here, is we get at least 30 cc's of water. So just hold both of these up and go into the blue and put water in your over tube. Okay. And then what we're going to do is hold our thumb over both holes and kind of yo-yo this to kind of lubricate that. So when we put the scope through here, it'll slide nice and easy. Okay. Over here, and then what we'll do is get the scope, and we're just going to put it right through the middle and slide it all the way up to the boot of the scope. Set it like that on the boot, and that's how the doctor will have it to start the procedure. Some doctors are taping this up here to hold it until they actually start using both of these during the case, but most of the time we can just set it like this. Okay. So the next step is we've got to put a balloon on the tip of the scope, meaning our double balloon. But what we've done is, since we've put the scope through water, this little outlet right there is the air outlet to inflate and deflate the balloon on the scope. Well, there's water in there now, and we don't want any of that in there. So what we're going to do is, with your other syringe that's dry, is we're going to force about 6 or 7 full of these air through here, and you'll notice over there water starts coming out of that tip. Okay. And we'll just continue. Now, we talked about this with Rachel. If you guys want, you could hook up oxygen in the room and hook it here and blow it out that way. But most time people just use the air to blow this out. A couple times you might wipe off the tip just to make sure you don't have a bunch of water there. And once that's, oh, still getting some more. Like I said, it usually takes 6 or 7 of these to get all that water out. They should be blowing this channel out as well once you reprocess the scope, because that will just leave extra water in there for you and make it a little bit of a hassle. Actually, 2 more. Okay. So we've got all the water out of that channel. Now we get to put on a balloon. So like I said, we're going to get our tools and get one of these. If you guys want to step over here, you can kind of see this a little bit easier. Tip of the scope. Let's see. I'm going to come back here so you can get a better angle on that camera. So like I said, just get one balloon out, and they're, like I said, either end's fine because they're both identical. And what you'll do is just fold this up. I'll slide this right up the middle of the balloon, like so, and then you can open it slide the tip of the scope right up through the center of that balloon. And then what we want is this part of the balloon to just come on the very tip of the scope, but not cover the lens or the biopsy port or anything like that. And we'll just have it right there on the end of the scope, like so. And then what you do is just hold this and kind of pull straight out back, and then that comes off. And then you can pinch this if you need to adjust it, this balloon, bring it down a little bit. It won't put a hole in it. They're actually pretty durable. And the biggest thing on this is you want the balloon to basically be like a ball. You don't want it to look like a football and have this part of it way down here, because it won't get very good grip in the bow. And I usually squeeze it to get all the air out. Okay. And then we'll get our two bands. And what you'll do with this, it's kind of like a gun. It's spring loaded, okay? And you'll just bring those 4 fingers together, slide a band over all 4, and then pull this back like you're pulling it like a gun. Just don't come all the way back to the metal, because you'll shoot this band off and either it'll go across the room or you'll shoot your eye out. All right? So it looks basically like this. And then what you'll do is just slide the scope through the middle of that and then come back. And then what I've been doing is just kind of place the band, have a little bit of the rubber, have a little bit of balloon showing in your band, and just kind of hold your band with your thumb and then fire it like a gun. And then it pops that on for you. And so now you've got a little balloon showing on the bottom side of the balloon, and then your balloon's attached that way, okay? And then we're gonna put another one on the tip of the scope. That's why we use 2 of them. So we'll do the same thing. Now this one's a little more important because you don't want to go too far down and close off that outlet where the air is coming in and out. And so what I usually do is just put it right on the tip of the scope, about I don't know, probably 1 millimeter down. And again, just kind of hold your thumb there and pop it. And you can adjust that a little bit, but that's totally fine. You can see we got a little bit of balloon showing, and we're not covering up anything on the lens or anything across the scope, so we can do the procedure, okay? Now the next step is just testing those to make sure they don't have a hole, make sure that they're gonna work fine. And we have, these get cleaned with the scope, so they'll be hanging with the scope. And we have 2 sets of tubing. One is for the scope and one is for the balloon. And you can see one's a little bit shorter than the other. So this is when you'll take off your cleaning adapter, and then we'll set that in here so that goes into the cleaning room. And then the new adapter, or the new part, and that's got water in it. They didn't blow those out. So anytime you see water in those, like here on the clear, you want to make sure you blow that completely out, because that won't, the pump's not strong enough to get that water out or back in and inflate and deflate your balloons properly. So
so the tubing's reusable up to 10 times?
Correct. So you can use this 10 times, and what happens is, why we're leaving this box down here is because it comes with 20 filters, and each time you change the filter, so there's 2, well, just dumped them all. There's 2 filters, and you'll change those each procedure. And then once you're done with the filters, then you throw the tubing and the filters away and start with a whole new one, okay? You wanna stop that?